Time for another bite-sized episode of One Soccer Today. Yes, that's right. Our club-by-club breakdown of all 11 Canadian professional soccer teams on the men's side continues today with a look at Atlético Ottawa, our national capital club. They're soon to have some company in 2025, but for now, they own the city, but they did not own the Canadian Premier League. After loading up in the off-season, the expectations through the roof, shattering whatever ceiling, I guess the roofs on either side of TD Place Stadium. But alas, after a red-hot torrid start with the super team on paper, no silverware and no CONCACAF Champions Cup berths for the club. They go into the offseason knowing they will be losing Ollie Bassett. They know that they will be losing Carlos Gonzalez, or have lost both of those men for the upcoming season. So now the question is, what's next? We'll prognosticate shortly, but let's stay in 2024. Oliver Platt, what letter grade do you assign Atletico Ottawa?
It's a tough one. I'm going to go with a C, because ultimately I think this team, like they were pretty close to making a CPL final in the end when you look at that second half against Forge in the semi-final, but they didn't. And they had, a squad littered with talent, littered with quality. Don't think they played particularly great football when it mattered at the most important time of year. And like you said, in terms of trophies, in terms of continental qualification, they come up empty-handed. So for me, you have to give them some respect for finishing in third place and again, for having a little bit of a playoff run. But ultimately, I don't think their supporters are coming out of this season particularly satisfied with what they saw.
And Jordan Wilson, not to mention, when you talk about big games and playing their best football when it matters, the Canadian Championship was also kind of a whoopee cushion, if you will, as well. It was an early exit.
Sorry, whoopee cushion. My mind went back to middle school for sure. My grade, it's a blend, right? Because there's two parts of the season. Like after Fernando left, the CEO, it's a blend. They had a great start. I was hard on them once. I said they never played well, but it was the great start. A very attractive team to watch. And I would say a poor ending. They get a B- for me. Why I give them a B- is because they still finished third. They were still at the top half of the majority of the season. They had a playoff game, and they're one game away from going to a final. But it's just about the style of play that they played. Like, they never called themselves the super team, but that's what they assembled. You have to understand when you bring in some of the best in the CPL and you put pressure on your team to go far, that you have to soak that in. I feel like they didn't. When there are times and games and wheels, we were there in the studio, we were like, this is the week they need to turn around and get a win. Then they score first, sat back, drew a game. Did it again, drew a game. That's why it's B-. It could have even been a C+ because towards the end, but I give them a B- because I thought there's spurs for them to turn it around. But I think they're going to have that same core going into 2025. If you can keep some big players, add one or two, they could be a team, but they have to play progressive football. They're not a team that can sit back and do that. They're never going to succeed that way. They have to change the way that they go about it.
Well, we'll see who the next manager is. I'm going to give him a D and follow me here. D for follow me here. Just wait, Oliver Platt. D for disappointing.
Chuckles McGee in the bottom right corner.
Can I speak? Can I speak?
Yes.
D for disappointment. They didn't lose any of their first 9 games of the season. They didn't lose in league play till June 15th. So springtime was great. The rest of the season, another D, was dreadful and too defensive. That's why it's a D. Also, it's noted by a departure of Fernando Lopez. So there's another D. And my final D is a feel-good story in Del Campo. Ruben Del Campo was a very good player of the season. So forget whatever. I'm just going with the letter D because it describes the detrimental form that they experienced through the summer months into the end of the year.
But Wheels, they're actually a D, though? I love what you did, but they're a D?
Thank you. Thank you.
You stay D.
I'm not blending anything. I'm staying D. And by the way, I just want to say, all the hype around Atletico Ottawa, it wasn't from Jordan Wilson and myself. I blame the One Soccer admin and the content team. We're pushing this super team. I'm like, yeah, they're probably going to be good. And the admin's like, oh, the best team ever built to get out of here. Jordan, you and I knew it all along, man. Too many cooks, not enough of an identity. So this is where they ended up.
Gareth Wheeler out for blood. I'm going to move us on before Sesame Street sends our lawyers an email about the lesson in alphabet we're doing here. Oliver Platt, where did it go wrong?
Donka,
If it's
Adam,
a C from
Donka.
you, a D from Gareth Wheeler. Where did it go wrong? Why wasn't it higher?
Well, they never figured out a way to get all their best players on the pitch at the same time in a way that was, was logical and gave them a style of play. And I think you hear about other teams. I think Cavalry had a moment like this where if you don't start the season well, which Atletico Ottawa did, there's a bit of a reckoning of, do we continue with how we believe we want to play, or do we have to make some adjustments here and be a bit more pragmatic? And teams like Cavalry, I think, tend to stick to it, right? They double down. They say they're going to, win or lose the way they want to do it. And it felt like Atletico Ottawa did the opposite. They kind of reverted to type. They reverted to their more defensive style of play as soon as some adversity hit. And it just resulted at the end of the season, I think, in a team that hadn't really developed, a strong identity of how they wanted to play football and how they were going to get the best out of their best players. It just never really happened.
Jordan, to add.
Matt, this team, you look at like their losses. What is it? I think they only had 6 for the season. Yeah, 6 for the season. Like, you look at that, you're like, decent. But the draws, and I think too specifically, you got to look at certain players. Like, it's hard to do a season where you were tremendous with like a Baloo Tabla in 2022 to go out and do that again, or Ali Bassett's best with 11 goals. But you have to do somewhere close. You can't fall off. I think to Ali's point, the big dogs that you have in your team, and specifically the CPL with the salary, if you have 4 big dogs, one can't have a breakout season. All 4 have to have a good to great season. And I think with Carlos Gonzalez and the design and the way that he had his team, it left out players that need the creative freedom to go and do their thing, and they didn't have it. You had Ali Bassett. No one could tell me he was happy. He was not happy. He was probably going to move anyways. Maybe it was time, and that happens in a footballer's career. But I would say the setup this season for Atletico Ottawa made it easy for their players to check out, because not everyone was bought in terms of the way they approach the game.
I get that. I mean, that's the process when you're competing for spots. Like, not every player is going to be happy with their role within this team. Look, there were some good performances. We shouldn't ignore this. Like, Ruben Del Campo had a breakout year. Thought he was excellent. Manny Aparicio, Amir Didic, Mateo Debrian. They had some really good pieces this year. But I can earmark when things went wrong. Like, I can pinpoint the time when things went wrong in Atletico Ottawa season. They lost 3 games in a row, and pretty convincingly so, against Cavalry, Forge, and York United. And that's when Carlos Gonzalez said, pulled the e-brake, and he changed the formation. They started playing 5 at the back. Like, this team was not playing to the strength of their personnel when you play 5 at the back. And that's what they did. They just decided that they were going to change their formation and play it a completely different way. And they never could figure it out because their best players weren't on the field because of that formation change. Honestly, that was the game changer of the season. And that's where the wheels completely fell off.
Okay, so lots of questions then heading into 2025. Some things we know, and you speak of the core, the 3 of you, and it's a good core. From my quick math, I'm searching up there. We need a cap friendly for the Canadian Premier League. I will commission anyone who wants to take that project on for me. But for my reckoning, Ingham's back. Yesley, I believe, is back. Didic has an option that will almost inevitably be picked up. Aparicio's back. Tabla still got a couple more seasons. The big loss is Ali Bassett. Mateo Debrian, there's been rumors that he is moving on to a new challenge at season's end, or the end of the calendar, I should say. So that's a question at wing back. Max Tissot retires. You have the lone players that come in, but maybe, just maybe, Gareth Wheeler, the player you've mentioned twice already on this program, Ruben Del Campo, I believe, is a free agent. Would you say that's probably one of the most important pieces of business that the Ottawa Brass have to take care of this offseason?
I mean, the number 9 position is the thinnest in the Canadian Premier League, and one that needs to be taken care of. And Del Campo, for me, a ready-made solution. I think he's comfortable in Ottawa. He looks right at home. It's a big offseason. I think in addition to Del Campo, and for me, he's a must-keep, is Atletico Ottawa need another center back. They need the right partner to play with Amir Didic. I'm sorry, just like a rotating cast of characters provided some stability, because Didic can be that good. And other than that, you need to determine who your manager is and what style they're going to play. But before you take any other steps forward. I will say this in terms of the goalkeepers. Ingham and Yesley are both starting quality in the CPL. They got to move one of those goalkeepers. I'm sorry, but both of them are too good to have one sit on the bench for the vast majority of the season. So for those two individual players and the fact that it is a relatively thin position, I think you got to move one of them on. Will it be Ingham or Yesley? I don't know.
Oliver Platt.
Yeah, I to be honest, don't really buy the too many cooks thing. Like, I don't think anyone says that about Forge when you talk
Were we
about
wrong?
Becker and Borges and Chouanier and Badibanga and all of the Jensen. Like, you can name, more names on Forge that I think are star players in this
Balance.
league.
Play a
than
different
Atletico
position.
Ottawa.
There's balance.
Balance, sure, but like, I don't know, a lot of these guys play different positions as well. To me, they have to get more out of their key players than they did this season. And the one at the top of the list for me, before you even start to look at new signings coming in, is Balou Tabla. They've got to get to the bottom of what happened to him this season to go from being arguably the best player in the Canadian Premier League to really a non-factor this season. Like, that's a massive difference between the side that won the regular season and this season's side. So I'd be looking internally a little bit, and obviously the new coach will play into that before I start looking at new recruits.
Last but certainly not least, Jordan Wilson.
I don't know what to say. What's the question?
What are the thoughts on the off season and looking ahead to 2025? We have 3 questions on this show and 3 questions only.
Yeah, but what am I supposed to answer? Who? Where do they go moving forward?
What do they got to do?
From here?
What's the off season have in store? How do they get better in 2025?
What do they need to do?
Look into your crystal ball.
Let me think.
Look into the crystal ball, Jordan Wilson. Look into it.
Hold on. I will step up for Jordan. This team should be contending next season. Let's just say it. Like, this team is not that far off. If they get the right manager and plug a couple holes in this team, and to Ollie's point, get the most of the tabla and get the most. Again, that's what the new manager's coming in. That's his job to do. But quite frankly, the way that this team is structured, the players that they have under contract, they're a massive club in Canadian football. They have great fans. This team should be competing next season.
Can I say this? Now that I'm
Please do. We've been waiting for 45 seconds.
Thank you. If you keep Del Campo, if you keep Sissoko, it's about the spine. Didis gets another partner. I thought Del Amo is great acquisition. But if you can even Tier Walker, just build him up properly, this team can compete. I'm with Wheels, but you cannot play the defensive way. They've done this since I played, and I feel like I've retired 10 years ago. They've played this way, and it will get them to a point, but it won't have them winning a championship. You have to have Manny Aparicio free. You have to have Tabla feeling his best self. This is the team that you built. So trying to have them play defensive and do all these things that they don't like is not going to get you to win that last game of the season. So they have to change their identity. They have to move forward and be progressive. Front foot pressing, getting into teams' faces. They'll win more games than they lose.
All right, Oliver Platt, final word then, because we mentioned Ollie Bassett leaving. And by final word, I mean, I'm going to ask you a question. With Bassett gone, is this Aparicio's midfield to really take over and get more of that attacking self back?
I think it was his team this year, to be honest with you, and it will continue to be so. But like one of the other things I'll add to what Jordan said is that clearly it had gotten to a point after 3 years where the supporters weren't in on the way they were playing either. They have to get that enthusiasm back as well, because they're a factor, I think, in that stadium. They have one of the best supporters bases in this league, and you could tell that it had just soured a little bit. So fresh start, I think, is probably good for everyone going into 2025.
And you can be a bit pragmatic on the road. Sorry, Ollie. But like at home, press, go and play. Like they played home games like they were away and they're playing at Burnabout. Like they were just like, oh, let's sit back. We don't want to lose. But go play the game.
That was the craziest thing. I think they're still scoring goals from that game against Valor and the Can Champ. Like, and then all of a sudden they were just a completely unrecognizable team 2 months later. I'm not sure how that happened. So onwards, I'm confident that with the right manager moving forward, they're going to be A-okay.
A disappointing season, but a bright future for Atletico Ottawa. A quarter of an hour chunk on Atleti. We will continue to go club by club across Canada on One Soccer Today. Thanks, Gareth. Thanks, Ollie. Thank you.